are your preferred method of not being uploaded. Right. This is the Arborist call for the 22nd of February, 2024. We'll start off with core team updates from ECC and the Foundation, and then we'll go into research and implementation updates from the various projects that are going on. We'll then open the floor for announcements, and then I've got one topic I just want to discuss briefly, which is whether there's a formal definition of what an experimental feature is, because we've been talking about that in the context of Zebra, and then we'll throw the floor open for any other discussion topics that anyone wants to raise. Like I said, this is the Arborist call. These are bi-weekly calls where people who contribute to Zcash come together to discuss timelines, processes, R&D efforts, new protocol features, and to coordinate to get rid of blockers and resolve issues. The idea is to make the development of the protocol more accessible and observable to a wider set of participants, and to provide more transparency for the Zcash community. Anyone can join these calls. All you need to do is go and register at zcasharborist.org, which will take you, point you towards the relevant Zoom registration page. And if you want to suggest a topic for discussion, you can drop us an email at arboristcall@zfnd.org to request a slot. To date, nobody has emailed us to request a slot, and it makes me a little bit sad. Let me just double check. Yes, the only emails I have are from Zoom to that email address. So
makes me sad.
There you go. Alternatively, just reach out to me directly, and we can add it. Other ways to get involved in Zcash are you can get a community grant if you have a project or an initiative that would benefit Zcash and its ecosystem. You can join the Zcash R&D Discord, where many of the engineers and folks who are working on Zcash hang out and discuss various technical topics. You can also join the ever exciting and enjoyable Zcash community forum, where discuss all sorts of topics ranging from what people are listening to currently to Zcash governance. And I appreciate it's not possible to click on a Zoom video, so you can find these links by pointing your browser at zcasharborist.org. Right, we'll start off with core team updates and over to ECC for updates on Zcash and/or the wallet SDK.
I guess that's me, unless Chris or Strad want to take it.
I'll let Jack Grigg take it. you stole Jack's link there, Dara.
Oh, okay. Chris.
Yeah, so our focus right now is entirely on the release of wallet SDKs. So we are currently in the process of working on a release of Zcash client backend that adds Orchard support. That will then be followed by another couple of weeks of implementation to get that plumbed fully through the Zcash client SQLite, and then on into the wallet SDKs for the Zashi 1.0 release, which we're expecting for the end of March. The other thing that's active there is we are undergoing a security audit starting at the iOS layer, and then working backwards towards the through the wallet SDKs and to the Rust libraries that support the SDKs. That will be finishing up before and we'll have a little bit of time to respond before the Zashi 1.0 release.
Yeah, the iOS release will probably be a little bit before the Android release, so the audit is time to fit in with that.
Is there anything that I'm missing?
Obviously, if there's anything that comes up in the audit that that is significant, then that timelines will move. So
the other thing that ECC team has been involved with recently is work supporting the Binance transparent source exchange addresses. And those, so we have a little bit of work now. So we've come to a resolution on the approach with the help of Jason McGee and Han and Paku and others, and feedback from Binance. So we have a finalization, bit of finalization there to do on ZIP 320, which defines those addresses, and then we have implementation in progress, basically ready to go for Zcash address, and then Zcash client backend support will follow.
Yep, and it will be the text encoded addresses. So alternative one in the current zip, but we'll change the zip to so it's probably just that alternative. Or do we want to? Yeah, we'll move it to an appendix.
Yeah, I think that zip will probably just become that alternative, and then we may separately, in the longer term, open a source address restriction metadata zip that would allow users to add metadata to their addresses that says, please shielded sources only, or please no pool crossing value exposed, and things of that nature.
Yeah, and that would that has the advantage that you can combine it with other metadata like address expiry and things like that. But for the immediate the immediate resolution of Binance's problem, we are going with text addresses.
Yeah, something that I would like to solicit, perhaps for I don't know if the Zcash community grants folks could put out a call for proposals, or whether there was any possibility of doing this under the minor grants umbrella. But we've received feedback that that if we want to have sort of widespread support for valid Zcash address parsing, that what we as a community should target are Java, Swift, and TypeScript native implementations that are equivalent to the Zcash address Rust crate. So if there's any appetite from anyone in the community to seek a grant to do a Java or Swift or TypeScript port of Zcash address, that is something that I think would be valuable. So if anyone's here from ZCG, then maybe you can help facilitate that outreach.
I think we can also ask if anybody isn't here from ZCG, you can also ask Dan to pass that on. Oh, Michael's here. Yeah, as is Andrew Arnott, who might be interested in that call. Cool. Any other questions for ECC relating to Zcashd or the Wallet SDK? Okay, let's move on to Zcash Foundation. I have to confess, I'm not sure who's in the hot seat today.
That should be me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I made a brief resume of what we are doing in the Zebra team in the last 2 weeks. First, we are finalizing with the Zebra Scanner gRPC interface. This ended up with 6 gRPC methods to interact with the Zebra Scanner. We created a document on basic functionality and information that I am sharing in the chat if people want to take a look. Of particular interest is the scan push interface that registers, starts scanning, and get a stream of results back to the user in an async mode. We know we are lacking some functionality. For example, we are not scanning for our chat transactions. We have a bunch of bugs that we are going to improve. However, we would like the community to test it up, people that might be interested in that, and provide feedback, comments, improvements, or whatever to us. That's something we will be looking for in the next, in a short period of time. In another topic, we are releasing Zebra 1.6.0, which is Marek working on, and I think that will be tagged very soon, probably between today and tomorrow. Another topic is that the Zebra team has been receiving different proposals to add rec test mode into Zebra from different organizations. For example, we got some proposals from Kedit, which we had been talking about in the last time. And in the last week, we received some pull requests from Single, which are kind of going in the same direction. We didn't have time yet to investigate further and decide what we are going to do exactly to solve this problem. It could be that we go with the Kedit stuff or with the Single stuff, or propose an alternative that satisfies everyone, or we can take pieces of each other. We are not sure yet, but we will try to research more and make a decision in that regard. Another topic we had today, our first meeting between the Electrical company and the Zebra team to discuss what functionality is lacking in Zebra that needs to be implemented in the future to replace Zcash. This is going to be an ongoing and collaborative effort between both teams, and we expect to do some work together in different repositories or crates or whatever. We will update, I guess, in the next Arborist call, where are we going to start working.
Yeah, that was very productive. I meant to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah. So the last one is that the Zebra team is going to be celebrating a hackathon sprint for the next 2 weeks. This is something we did in the past, which every kind of team member, or we make a small teams to work in some fun feature we want to add to Zebra, and that we never have time because of the, your routine stuff that we need to do. So in the past, we make, with the same idea, we make a progress bar features, which makes Zebra looks pretty similar to how Zcash does. We made an Elasticsearch integration, and I remember we did an Arch Linux packages. I might be missing some of the other things we did in the last hack sprint we did. But yeah, we will be doing that in the next 2 weeks. For now, the proposals we have that we are pretty sure we will be working on is to restore Tor support that we had in the past, but we had a lot of dependency issues and we had to abandon it. So we want to get back into a Tor support, integrating with the RT software, which is the Rust client for Tor. I will be probably working on that, maybe with someone else. Another idea that Arya is going to be working on or leading is create a graphic user interface to launch Zebra with some Rust tool called Tauri. So we will maybe at the end of the 2 weeks, we'll have that. And another idea I'm aware is that Conrado will probably be working in the restore Windows support in Zebra that we had to abandon by Zebra Zcash script issues, I think it was. So we maybe restore that with something we want to do since a lot, and we never had time to do it. And I guess that will give us our manager to give some time to decide what will be the next medium or big next thing for Zebra between a pool of things that we want to do. Yeah, I think that's it for Zebra.
Thanks, Alfredo. Any questions relating to Zebra?
Is the Frost support in a different section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to add an expression of joy and satisfaction at today's meeting between the two engineering teams. Something I've wanted to happen for 3 years basically. So finally happening is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on and let's get an update if there is any, and it's absolutely fine, I think, with any of these to say there is no changes since last time. But if there's any updates on trailing finality?
No update.
Short and sweet.
We're still I'm still planning to write up my changes for Crosslink 2. We're trying to figure out how and whether proof of stake fits into our timeline at ECC, but there's no firm conclusion on that yet.
Next is there anybody on who can talk about the sustainability fund? No?
I don't see anybody.
Move right on to anybody on from Kedit?
Nope.
Okay, well, I know we have somebody on to talk about Frost.
Yeah, it's me. So yeah, this week, this week, we released 1.0.0 stable release of Frost crates, which is exciting. The previous release was a release candidate, and the only difference between the stable release and the release candidate is just a bunch of methods that we exposed based on users' feedback. But that's mostly it. But also importantly, there was a bug fix, and this bug fix was came from a vulnerability disclosure. So Trail of Bits reached out to us in January to let us know that they found a vulnerability in multiple Peterson commitment based distributed key generation protocols, including Frost, but not only Frost. So this vulnerability, basically the main aspect of it is that when you're generating a key, for example, with Frost, when you're generating key shares using the distributed key generation protocol, each participant generates like a polynomial and a bunch of coefficients for this polynomial and publishes a commitment to these coefficients. So the issue was that we weren't checking the length of this commitment, so a malicious participant could generate a larger polynomial. And in practice, this would result in generating key shares that had a higher threshold than intended. So for example, if you're generating a 2 out of 3 wallet, Frost wallet, maybe an attacker could cause it to be actually 3 out of 3, or even 4 out of 3 would in practice make the wallet unusable. You'll never be able to generate a valid signature. So this is a denial of service vulnerability. It's not like key compromise. It just prevents you from using, it can prevent.
It was prevented from being shorter than it should be. It could just be longer. Is that right?
Yeah, it can be only longer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically the denial of service vulnerability. So we fixed that by simply checking the length of commitment, and that fix is out in 1.0.0 stable release. But of course, we are not aware of any deployment ready applications of our libraries. So we don't think there's any complete impact. But if you're using our crates, please update to the stable release, which you should anyway. But yeah, That's it. And also working on the demos. We finished phase 1. On the last update, it was ready, but it had some pull requests needing review. So that's merged. We have updated README to describe how to run it. So if you want, you can clone your repo and do the Frost demo over the internet. The only catch is that, you have to run a server, so people need to connect to you. And if you're behind firewalls or NATs, that can become a problem, but it works. Other than that, it works. And we already have good progress on phase 2, which is basically factoring out a server that decoupling the server from the coordinator. That should help with those connectivity issues, since everyone connects to the server, and much easier in practice for people to use it. So yeah, we're halfway through that, and that's it for Frost. Yes.
Any questions about Frost? I just want to express our thanks to Trail of Bits, by the way, for sharing that that vulnerability in a responsible manner.
Yeah, I'm wondering about
contribution to the security of Frost. Sorry, Derek.
Yeah, it's a nice catch. I'm wondering about the sort of a root cause analysis, though, because it doesn't seem as though the polynomial needs to be variable length because the parameters obviously can change between instances, but it doesn't for any given instance. It should be a fixed length. So why was the code allowing that flexibility when it didn't need it?
Yeah, I think the answer is that it's not like you can't restrict like a vector by default. You need to actively, we could, I think the right call should be for us to use like a wrapper struct that limited the length of this commitment vector to be the expected length. But
you were already checking that it was at least the correct length, right? Because that would have been a security vulnerability. You wouldn't have constrained the commitment.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You were already checking that it was at least the right length. Were you explicitly checking that, or were you just referencing the indexes and it would crash if it wasn't?
That's a good question. I will need to check the code. Yeah, I can remember at the top of my head. I don't remember having like explicit length check. So
Yeah.
Okay, so it was accident. Yeah, it was accidentally not having that vulnerability. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the bit that gets a bit annoying here from an implementation perspective is that because it's a multi-round interactive protocol, you have to essentially serialize and then reload state between different network calls, which may in some cases be asynchronous, while also handling the fact that the implementation, like the decision, or like, are you going to do a 3 of 5 or a 5 of 7 or whatever, is ideally a runtime decision because it's up to the users on what they want to do. Although it's not. So encoding that into the types of the state machine is handy and useful from a implementation perspective, but severely limits the usability of the resulting binaries. So there's probably wasn't an easy way to like programmatically detect this. This is, because it's essentially, it ends up being a thing you just have to make sure every time you load your state from disk and from network for the next phase that you recheck, because there's been similar vulnerabilities in other protocols, like invalid curve attacks and outsized, not checking the lengths of your field elements in other protocols, that are all essentially the same thing, which is that if there's flexibility in your cryptographic scheme, you can generally exercise that to break something.
Yeah, I'm looking at the blog post has a list of affected libraries. So are these all vulnerable because they were basically copying how each other did it, or are they derived from the same code?
I'm not super familiar with all of these, but I don't think I know that none of these are based on our code.
Right. Okay. So
Pretty sure.
they're independent implementations, but
Yeah.
they're looking so closely at the other implementations that they reproduce the same.
Maybe.
Is there anything in the RFC draft that might have led to this implementation direction?
Not exactly, because the RFC draft doesn't talk about key generation, it's just signing, right?
Oh,
Key
true. That's
generation is
true.
kind of,
Right. Yeah. So there is no spec.
Yeah, exactly.
That might be a useful thing to write.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the RFC, or it could be in appendix.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess the RFC is already published, so
yeah, it's
in the process of
that boat
proposed,
has sailed as far as changing it now.
Yeah, but we could like do a informal standard in this published somewhere. Yeah,
Yep.
I agree that would be a good idea. But yeah, programming wise, I wish we had used some like new type to wrap the vector, and that would ensure that it will always have the correct length regardless of whatever it was decoded or generated or whatever.
We should all be using dependently typed languages that make it really easy to make the length of something depend on a parameter.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I think the trade-offs in favor of dependently typed languages have been sort of misunderstood widely, because they don't have to be as complex as people perceive them to be.
Right.
In most cases, when you get dependent typing, it actually simplifies a whole bunch of special cases.
Yeah, one of these days I'll actually implement NERTA, and you will all see how much simpler it is, or can be. I'll show you all.
I'll show you all. Any more questions or comments on Frost? Okay, let's open the floor for any announcements or any news that anybody wants to share. If you've got something you'd like to announce, raise your hand.
I guess I can announce it's the 16th anniversary of me coming out as trans today.
Oh, happy. What's the appropriate congratulations for that?
Happy Transition Day.
Happy Transition Day. 16 years, yeah.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't feel like 16 years, and in another sense, it does.
16 years, that's almost 2 weeks.
It's gonna, so this year it's gonna be a third of my lifetime I've been out anyway. So it's a milestone.
That allows us now to work out how old you are there.
Yeah, it's just some simple algebra will work that out, yes.
Any other announcements or news anybody wants to share? Okay, we'll hop on to the next topic, and this is just a brief and fairly informal one, but obviously we've been working recently on adding viewing key scanning capabilities to Zebra, and we're going to release what we call we're going to release it as what we call an experimental feature, but I'm conscious that terminology has been used for a long time by Zcash, and I wondered if there was any formal definition of it beyond just the fact that it's hidden behind the experimental feature flag in Zcash.
So apart from being hidden behind that flag, it basically means that we're not making a compatibility commitment to that feature. So it might change.
Yeah, you basically have to assume that kittens may come along and eat your code at any time.
Yes. It could be removed without further notice, or changed without further notice.
Yeah, and there's no as was said, there's no expectation of backwards compatibility or any sort of migration path. That's what we haven't meant that as, and that's what we are indicating as well with. So in like Zcash primitives, we've documented now specifically some feature flags on Zcash primitives crate and similar crates as also experimental features, such as the unstable NU6 feature flag. You depend on that right now. You're going to break consensus stuff, and you're also going to break a bunch of other stuff. To some extent, there's a separate conversation to be had about how we do those pieces, and which we maybe should talk about. But for now, kittens can be eating things.
Alfredo.
Specifically.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, how do you differentiate in Rust what is an experimental feature or any other feature? Because you have these flags, but that doesn't mean, I guess, that it is experimental. How do you see
it's entirely conventional.
Rust crate?
Yeah. So in Zcash, it means that the feature is behind a command line flag or a Zcash zcashd.conf flag. The Zcash.conf. And whether that's implemented in terms of a Rust feature, it probably isn't if it's Zcashd. So that's a separate concept from features in Rust libraries.
Yeah. So the word feature in experimental feature conceptually has nothing to do with Rust feature flags.
Right.
It just so happens that currently we have a few things that are implemented via Rust feature flags that are experimental features. So there's no like formal thing in the Rust compiler that enables an experimental feature, although this is something that this is what I was referring to like 30 seconds ago. So sure, we'll talk about it now. Rust feature. So Rust has obviously the concept of conditional compilation. So you can place things behind a octothorpe, open square brackets, CFG, parens, anything in there enables you to turn on a condition with some sort of Boolean logic for when something should or shouldn't be compiled. So that's the primitive that the Rust compiler gives you for including or excluding something. And you can just like pass through configure flags to Rust C directly via the Rust flags environment variable to enable and disable things. Feature flags are specifically a feature of Rust that are implemented via Rust config arguments, but they have specific mechanisms and they are intended to be additive only. So it should never be a semver breaking change to enable a feature flag in your dependency tree. Now, in practice, people use and misuse them for things that are technically breaking semver, in part because there can be some very subtle semver API issues that are hard for developers to reason about and think about. And so within the context of, within our experimental features thing, an example of this is like the Z future flag that we've had around for a while. We've had that sitting there that like it is quote unquote additive because it adds a new transaction format, the Z future format, that we can just throw anything in that is like experimental and being experimented with. But technically adding an enum case to a Rust enum is a breaking change. And
I mean, not
there-
just that, it's also an incompatible consensus change.
right, because I was literally about to say that. Is that
sorry.
is that you're then it's changing, it's not adding APIs, it's changing how the parsers work in a way that that means, yeah, you're expanding or contracting consensus. So something that we've started experimenting with for Orchard specifically is we put the Orchard feature flag in Zcash client back in the Zcash client SQLite behind a Rust flag. So you have to enable like Zcash -config Zcash unstable equals Orchard in order to compile with the Orchard feature flag. And we've altered our CI to do this as well. And that essentially means that you can then at that point, you can make behind that config flag whatever changes you want, because it's no longer just a feature flag. It's a config flag, which has no kind of like semver or compatibility support or anything to deal with. So we may want to consider moving the experimental features in general to just be config flags rather than feature flags. The downside is it's not as nice to work with them because you have to put things in through environment variables, and also that config flag just applies universally. So if you happen to pick a name for that config flag that collides with anything else anywhere in your dependency tree, that will get enabled as well. The upside is you don't run into this problem where feature flags look like they can be enabled because they exist, if you haven't noticed that there's documentation saying that these are experimental.
Yeah. What was I going to say?
The
What happens if you use the Orchard feature flag and don't set the environment?
Right now we've set it to a compilation failure, which you do by just there's a macro you can use in Rust that will force, if it is compiled in, the compiler will emit a compilation error.
Yeah.
So we've got that. If you precisely using the Boolean options of if you have the Orchard feature enabled but you don't have this config flag, then it emits that compiler failure.
One of the limitations of feature flags is there are some things most top of mind would be constraints, so trait bounds that you can't actually flag off, and so there's some things that you would like to be able to hide behind a feature flag but that are just inexpressible in Rust in a way that well there are some workarounds but they're really inconvenient. So
there's work being done.
So if you
to
duplicate the whole trait, then you could.
Yeah, that's essentially what you have to do right now. There is an RFC that's just been merged for essentially fixing this by allowing you to add conditional compilation onto where bounds, and that basically solves the language UX problem of allowing bounds to be conditionally compiled. You still have to account for the fact that adding or removing a bound is a breaking change to a trait, so that still isn't really an appropriate use of feature flags. But the closer the problem you run into with feature flags there is the spooky action at a distance problem, where because feature flags are always unified, so the feature flags enabled for any dependency is the unification of all feature flags that were enabled by anyone in your tree. If you depend on a library and enable one feature flag, and then someone else depends on that same library enabling a different feature flag that actually conflicts, then you end up in a situation where you can't do anything. You run into this far less when your dependencies are direct dependencies right underneath you, like very close to the application layer, because you essentially control all or most of the code there. But if the dependency is very deep in the tree, then you can be in a position where through no fault of your own, you cannot compile and there's nothing you can do. You're beholden to the maintainers of those libraries, which is why for libraries, the general premise is make sure that features are additive.
Yeah. So can I answer Andrew Arnott's question? So he pointed out an example where you have a pub trait and you conditionally enable a particular method on it, depending on a flag. So normally, yes, that would be a case of a semver breaking change dependence on a feature flag. But in this particular case, because the Orchard feature flag is also dependent on this this other environment variable flag, then that is
That's-
essentially saying that we're not making that guarantee.
Right, but that's not the real reason for doing that, because the plan is when Orchard's released, we'll remove that unstable, like Zcash unstable flag around it, and it will still behave this way. There are two answers to this question that Andrew posed. One is you can make these kinds of changes to traits in a non-Semver breaking way, but you need, because the problem here essentially is if someone depends on the version of the library and they don't enable that flag and then they implement that trait, they haven't implemented the flagged off method. They may not have wanted to. It may be like, say someone wants to depend just on Orchard support, and so they disable the sapling feature flag so they don't depend on the sapling crypto dependency. They don't want to implement any of those sapling logic. But if what they're implementing is another lower level library that depends on Zcash stuff, but itself will be depended on, and then someone else depends on that trait and is enabling sapling, then that's where the breakage happens. So there's two ways around that. One is to make sure that anything that has a feature flag has a default implementation. So then if it gets enabled, then there's a fallback method that is provided, so there's no code compilation, everything just works. And that's what we've done in other places. And then the other thing is to only do this kind of flagging when you're very close to the application layer. And that's the example that Andrew points at. That's what's happening there. So we've flagged things off with the Orchard flag that don't have a default implementation. But the rationale is that if you're depending in this case on the wallet read trait, you're implementing a wallet application. So it is unlikely that you're going to run into this diamond dependency problem that leads to spooky trait action and feature enabling at a distance. So the real solution here is going to be turn the Zcash client backend into essentially this is an application crate in name, like other than it's a library, but it is used directly in applications and not a deep dependency. So that means moving the things that are more suitable for a deep dependency usage, like batch scanning and other areas of that, out of that crate.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, and in that particular case, again, it's we would not necessarily have built have it the way that it currently is if the language were able to represent we're able to conditionally enable trait bounds. Which will there's an RFC or something of that sort that is
the one I mentioned earlier.
So,
there are ways you could structure this where you put like the Orchard specific stuff into an Orchard specific trait, and then you just never implement that trait. In practice, the problem essentially here is that Zcash client backend is not just adding these traits, it has a bunch of generic methods that assume those traits exist. And that's where you run into this problem, because if you're trying to write a general like scan compact blocks method that scans for sapling and Orchard, you're needing to, if you want to scan both sapling and Orchard, you need to have the database to be bounded on both the sapling and Orchard traits. And that's where the top of the diamond and the interaction pattern comes in. And we're trying to write those essentially application methods in a generic way so they can be reused by multiple applications. If instead we had like a bunch of individual methods for like scan the sapling stuff, scan the Orchard stuff, and so on, then we could just flag off each of those methods, and the applications that didn't want to support sapling wouldn't have access to the sapling method. So it's a language level annoyance that we're sort of just coping with for now, because it's good enough and not too many people are going to run into this problem. But we may have to revisit later. But getting back to the point of experimental features, those are certainly deep enough in the dependencies. Like Zcash primitive is a much lower level dependency that we can't do this kind of thing. So we do need to respect how feature flags are meant to be additive, which means that experimental features of the sort that we should be able to like do wide-ranging changes to do experiments probably need to be moved away from feature flags.
Strad, can you share, out of band, can you share a link to or a pointer to this compilation flag that causes causes it to fail to compile if it's not set appropriately. Hoping that Strava is saying yes behind his mute button. Alfredo, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, so I was thinking on how we in Zebra use the feature flags. And right now, for example, we do a bunch of stuff behind feature flag with all the troubles that it becomes a bit difficult to maintain at the end. But we, of course, we don't have a difference for experimental features or other features that could be really useful for users. So by what the Strat said, is a matter of convention. So I think we should write that in a README or something like that, because sometimes it feels like we have a stuff behind a feature and it feels like we need to remove it from behind that feature at some point. And that may not be the case. There are features that will ever be there. There are other features we will want to remove it behind that flag, not because they are experimental, but after certain testing, we include it in the main stuff, which in the main repo, which makes things a bit easier. But we don't have a distinction right now, and I think that may be what we need.
Yeah, I think there's I think that we are using Rust features in a sensible way in Zebra to allow people to expose different pieces of functionality. And yeah, I think just describing some of them as experimental features and maybe using this thing. Thanks, Trav, for posting this link. Maybe using this this approach to ensure that people don't accidentally enable or start relying on a feature that we consider to be experimental is probably a good approach.
Yeah, because in that regard, this kind of conditional compilation flag approach, gating the feature flags behind these this compilation, is essentially equivalent to what Zcash does with its experimental command line flag. If all of those other command line flags that are disabled and can't be used if you haven't enabled that flag. The one thing I will note, however, is if you do this gating, then the all features flag does not work when you compile, because again, the Rust compiler doesn't know that you're doing this. So if you ask Cargo to compile with all features, it will try and compile with all features, including the experimental ones. So anywhere you want to use all features, you'll need to also add all of those experimental things that you've gated off. So that's one possible argument for using for unstable things in particular, maybe using the config flag approach entirely rather than feature flags. And then maybe if it's something that you want to be conditionally compiled by feature flags once it's done, then maybe at that point you then, instead of having it be you feature flagged it, but then you made the feature flag gator behind this, maybe you just started as a conditional compilation flag, and then when you're ready for it to be an added, and it's an additive feature that you want to add to, add conditionally to the main stable code base, replace all those config things gated by an unstable Rust flag with a feature flag at that point. And keep
maybe
that would allow unstable. So if you took that approach, then all features would then be all non-experimental features, because you wouldn't be using feature flags for experimental things.
Yeah, but maybe there's some macro that you can write that actually replaces the config macro and can use either approach, so that you don't actually have to replace all of those things.
Yeah, anyway. Actually, that on its own would be something like, if we want to unify how we handle experimental features between the Zcash Rust crates and Libero Zcash and Zebra, that might be a suitable component crate that we could just like put the shared like how we handle this across our ecosystem into that logic there, and then we would just
that might be generally useful for the people. It should be a standalone crate.
Yeah.
I have to go soon.
Okay. Thanks for that input to everybody who participated in that. Moving on, does anybody want to raise any topic for open discussion? Going once. Going twice. Okay, let's leave it there. There doesn't get to miss anything. And we will see you all in a few weeks for the earlier slot call at 3 p.m. UTC on the 7th of March. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Have a good evening, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you happen to be. And thanks for joining us. Cheerio.
Thank you all. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank you.
See ya.